Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Bob's Woodshop. After making that shotgun case last month, I decided to make another one for my black powder rifle. So a lot of this video is going to be the veneering job that we did with this project. And so I'm going to be skipping through a lot of these sections of actually building the box, but here all I'm doing is getting the boards, and I'm using oak boards to make the case itself. So this is really just getting the pieces to size and using the joiner, my planer, my table saw, and using my chop box here to cut the length. And if you want to see more details on this part of the process, look at my shotgun case video. I've also wanted to make an asymmetric dovetails on this, so I'm using my lead dovetail jig for this particular project. So using the lead jig is relatively simple. There's a little bit of a learning curve with it, but once you figure it out once, it's pretty easy to refresh yourself with the process. Here I'm using my table saw and the router attachment to make the grooves for the top and the bottom panels. So these are stopped grooves, so you can see I'm placing it down on top of the router bit. This way you don't have showing those grooves once you put the dovetails together. And here I'm just cutting up a rough shape of the bottom and the top of the box. Notice I'm using my face shield. I like to be safe in the shop. And here is an initial dry fit. Make sure everything's looking good. You can make the joints as loose or as tight as you want. I like making them nice and tight. So coming up shortly, I'm going to go visit my buddy Craig Newton, who lives in the same town, and he's going to give us a lesson on veneering, both making a pattern as well as the backgrounds. So here we go with Craig. So Craig, why don't you take us through your process and how you go about making these fantastic patterns?
Okay, when we're making a panel like this, basically what you want to do is you want to deal with the background first. All right, so we're going to cut pieces of walnut in this particular case to size. And you can see that paper cutter, the right paper cutter, just cuts this stuff like butter. It's great. And you can also, I set up jigs so I could do 45s and 30s and 60s on this. So you can get a fairly accurate cut with this if you got your stuff together. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Veneer is a very delicate material, and you have to be really careful with it. I've been working with it for many years, and I still will make a panel and then hit it with my hand and crack it or something like that. Yeah. It's just, you got to be really careful, and part of the key is get that stuff, all your tools off the table if you're not using them. You know, put them away. This way you know where they are too.
Sure. Okay. So next step, once to cut the length, we got to start cutting to width.
All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take these and we're going to make square edges. We're going to make perfectly straight edging so that we can flip these around and book mesh them. And you can see it's a symmetrical pattern because each piece is approximately a 32nd of an inch thick. Yeah. So when you cut them, when they're cut at the factory, they're virtually identical.
Next process.
Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm going to cut straight edge. So when I butt them together, it's going to look like a solid piece of wood.
All right.
All right. The idea is to not have gaps, obviously, all right, to make it look like a pro did it. All right. What you're going to be using for this particular process is a veneer saw.
All right.
These things, if you're going to do this type of work, it's pretty critical to have one of these. All right, and there's a certain way to sharpen it. That's a whole nother story. We could do that some other day. Right. It's very simple. I have a work sharp sharpener, man. I put this thing on there.
Oh, I just do the bottom.
And within a few seconds, it's as sharp as it can be.
Yeah, those are great.
All right, so it's very important because this is a flat edge. and there's a bevel. A flat edge goes against your straight edge, and you have to remember that that's the edge. It's going to be butting against each piece.
It's got to be perpendicular.
So it has to be perpendicular. The other, I mean, you can't really see it, but there is a bevel on this.
Okay. The bevel's on the top.
Yeah. All right, so right up against your edge, very lightly, you score it.
So this works better than an X-Acto knife?
Oh yeah. X-Acto knife, what'll happen is it'll get caught in the grain and it'll go off.
Okay, so now that we have one straight edge, now what's
Okay,
next?
so what you want to do is you want to mark each straight edge. You know, you don't have to number them. Just do it with a pencil mark. Again, keep your veneers in order because they came off the cutter in a certain sequence, and you want to make sure that you keep that sequence. All right, so now I got that side cut.
So just flush them up and do the same thing on the other side.
Now we can do the other side. Okay, so now we got our cuts, and you can see how these pieces fit together. The seams almost disappear. All right, and once they're glued down, usually the veneer will press. When we put the veneer tape on, it will press together, and the seam almost disappears.
Okay.
You won't even see it. So we're setting up the panel now so that we can, let's see what we got.
Are we gonna? This is gonna be cut in the middle here. Just four pieces.
No.
No.
No,
Or
this is it. This is your
okay.
panel.
Okay.
And then you're gonna have your geometric design in the center.
Okay.
All right. Basically, what you want to do now is use blue painter tape, and you're going to tape this thing together. So we're going to find our best configuration, move it a little bit so that the grains match and it looks cool. And we're going to start taping. All right, so basically blue painter tape.
This is your palette of tape.
Yep, my palette of tapes.
Okay.
Good?
Yep.
Okay, so now we're going to start taping. All right, when you're taping, you're putting a little pressure on the veneers on both sides with your fingertips.
Snugging them up a little bit.
Snug them up. That's exactly right. Yeah, but
So all we really did is just put a couple of strips of tape down and just cut it in little sections. This is to improve efficiency and make it nice and neat. You certainly don't want to be tearing these off one at a time. Okay, so what's next, Craig?
okay, now what we're going to do is we have the panel with a preliminary tape. All right, this is the glue side, so we're going to flip it around. All right, you can see that this is what the finished panel is going to look like on the board. All right, but it's obviously going to be cut to fit, and it'll be centered.
Okay.
All right, we're going to put veneer tape now.
So what's with all these different veneer tapes?
All right, the one I'm going to use is a self-adhesive tape.
Okay.
All right, these are water-based. Okay, so basically it's a glue. This one is just a masking tape, but this is a water-based. This is a water-based tape, and basically what you do is you wet it with a sponge, and obviously you have cut it before to fit your size, and then you lay it down and you press it down onto the panel.
Okay.
And then when that tape dries, as it dries, it shrinks. And any little bit of seam
Oh, it sucks it in.
will suck together.
Oh, nice.
Yes, so it's good for that purpose, but in our particular situation, I'm impatient, so I want to move quick. So we're going to use the self-adhesive.
Okay.
We don't want to wait for the water to dry, which will take, a couple hours.
Okay.
So we're not going to use this today. It has certain applications, but this particular tape is a self-adhesive tape. Great stuff.
So is this stickiness like masking tape?
It's similar to masking tape, but I don't think it's as sticky as some of the masking tapes on the market.
Okay.
All right, so
step is...
All right, we're going to start squaring the panel out.
Okay.
All right, so basically you have these rough edges. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a straight edge. All right. And then we're going to cut this. And we don't really have to worry about squaring it off so that it's exact 90s, because we're not going to need to worry about that at all.
We can trim that later on once it's on, right?
Yeah, once it's on and it's in position, we're good. All right, back to your veneer saw. All right. All right, again, right up against the flat. Now we're going across the grain. So you gotta be careful you don't blow out the edge. So basically, sometimes you should just go like this and cut in the opposite direction so that you make that score and it doesn't blow the edge out. Going across the grain is a little more difficult.
Always just working on end grain, right?
Yep. What you want to do is give yourself like a 1/16 of an inch on the edge.
Right.
So when we press this, if we have too much on the edge, when the press comes down around it, it's going to break it.
Right.
All right, so we want to make sure that it just has enough so that it won't break. And now we're just going to mark this.
And trim the sides.
And we'll trim this side. Okay, so here's your panel. This is all trimmed out. It hangs over about a 1/16 to an 1/8 on each side. It's centered out, and we're good to go. So now what we want to do is we're going to build an inlay and put that directly in the center. It's going to be a custom piece that Bob is going to design,
Okay.
and we're going to put it together starting now.
Okay. Next, we got to make some thin stripes, right?
Yeah, we're going to make some thin strips so that we could basically book them together. This is a Tino. This is an African wood. It's really a nice material. It works well, and it kind of finishes out like mahogany. Also a lot cheaper than mahogany. This is, we may use this. You look at this. This is a 4-piece book match. It's very subtle, and it has triangular patterns in it. These are smaller. Same thing. These are all pieces that are from a project that I had left over. All right, so here we have some dyed material. This is a silver gray. We have a bright yellow. We have, it looks like Purple Heart, but it's actually a dyed material again, purple. We have another silver blue, and here's some more Tino. So, and this is kind of a great accent.
I love that.
Yeah, this is pretty cool stuff. I think this is a sycamore, American sycamore. And that's it. All right,
So basically what we're doing, we're going to be going to try to get some stripes like this, but we have to make long pieces, and then we'll cut them up into the geometric patterns. So the next step is going to be to cut thin strips. Set, go.
all right, if you get involved with veneer, veneer work can bring your projects to a totally different level. It's just so much you can do. I mean, there's so many different patterns that you could form. There's so many different beautiful woods that you can use. It just, whatever your imagination tells you, you can make it. And it's just a fantastic medium to work with. It just steps up your projects just to the top level.
Totally agree. Okay, Craig, what's next?
All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to cut strips. We want, obviously it's very important if we're going to be dealing with angles, 90-degree exacts, we're going to have to cut these strips absolutely perfect.
Right.
All right, so they have to be, if it's 3/8, it has to be 3/8 all the way across.
So this is your pile of spacers that you have?
Yeah, I have different spacers, and basically all it is pieces of plywood or MDF or something that's stable.
It's just different widths.
And I mean, obviously you could use it this way as a 3/8 inch spacer, or you could use it this way.
Right.
Whatever the thickness of the ply is.
Okay.
One of the things that we did that we didn't video was before we start, we cut a straight line here.
Right.
We did that with a veneer saw, just like we did in the beginning of the video. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take a straight edge, we're going to put it on top of our piece of wood, We're going to place this here. We're going to move this to the end.
Just flush it up.
And we're going to take this piece of masonite and bring it right to the edge of your veneer. Now we're going to flush this against that masonite.
Yeah.
And now basically what we're going to do is we're going to clamp it all together.
So this is the way you cut. You don't want to be cutting veneer on a table saw. You do it with the veneer saw. So this is really just a spacer system.
So this we're going to do with a razor.
Yeah, okay. So that gives you a perfectly parallel stripe.
All right, you can check it. It's 3/8 there, 3/8 there. We're good to go.
Yeah.
We're going to use a razor knife. Let's see. I happen to like these you could buy. They're old paint
scrapers.
Yeah, wallpaper knives.
Yeah.
Not so easy to find anymore, but look at garage sales, yard sales, you'll find them. All right, I got to get over here.
So we're using this instead of the veneer saw just because it's one piece?
Yeah, it's one piece, and this straight edge is hard to get a veneer saw against and hold and maintain your position. Okay. Here, I'm just basically putting the razor against the straight edge and just gliding it along.
Yeah, take several cuts. Don't try to cut the whole thing.
Yes, you don't need much pressure. Very little pressure.
So then we have to repeat this process about 3 or 4 more times depending on the widths and colors and patterns.
And there's your first piece.
Right.
All right, so we repeat.
Okay, so as we get more and more stripes, Craig's cutting some more, but we're just going to be building out a band that we can cut into some geometric shapes so we can get a square and some triangles. Again, something along the lines of this. What are we doing now?
Okay, now we're starting our taping. All right, so basically we're going to
This looks like very delicate work.
tape the crap out of this thing, yes. All right, so there you can see how it's starting to come together.
Just make sure the seams are nice and tight.
Yep. It's starting to look like something now.
We decided not to use the red racing stripes.
Yeah, maybe we'll use it on the next piece.
Yeah. Okay, so once we're all nice and taped up here, what are we going to do next?
Okay, so we're rolling it, and basically what the rolling does is it pushes anything that's out of line back in line, and it secures the tape. And now we're going to use, we could cut this, or we could go back to what we did initially. With our cutter. Real quick.
So we're going to cut some lengths and then some 45s.
See? That's what it's going to look like.
All right.
Pretty nice.
Awesome. So we're putting this on, and then we're going to take the blue masking tape off so we can do the gluing. This is the second pattern that we're going to do, and we are going to use the racing stripes. And this one, very delicate, fine work. That veneer looks like it's about 1/32 of an inch wide. Very delicate stuff. This is not something you do in a hurry. This is a nice Zen-like process. Out here chilling out in your shop, hanging out with your buddies. Life is good.
And you
Just take a look at it. Wait a second. Let's take a look at it. Very cool. Brown, purple, tiger maple, red racing stripe. Little trim, trim, trim.
Okay, basically, I just want to give people an idea these particular strips could be used to border any veneer pattern. In other words, I could take this, and instead of just using a red stripe, I could border it with this, you know, with a smaller pattern on the inside, or border it like this, you know. So you can make any border you want with any material.
Yeah, the possibilities are endless. Yeah.
You don't have to deal with commercially available stuff. You can build your own, and it's very easy to do. Okay.
This just takes patience and a steady hand, a little creativity for the pattern.
We'll come very close to it. Okay, so we're finished with most of this stuff. Let's get it off the table.
Yeah, just clean up for the next process.
This is basically my jig to cut 45s on this little machine.
Yeah.
Works pretty well, but we're going to do probably a more accurate cut with another piece later on. Almost took the end of my finger off again. Okay, so that's garbage.
So now we're cutting the other. This is the first diamond shape that we're going to make. Cool. And then you use 4 of those, and once we have 4 of those, we can turn that into a square. The important thing is just making sure that you're right in that corner.
Okay, we got a problem though. Okay, so we're almost at our assembly point of this.
This is really looking cool.
And you can see how that all comes together. There's a little tip missing right in the center of this one, but we can fix that. All right, so what we have to do is we have to, you can see that it's not going to go together quite right. That's probably off maybe half a degree on each side. So that adds up to 2 degrees.
Right.
So that's a problem. So what we're going to do is we're going to now
do a straight
assemble
edge.
2, and then we'll do a straight edge on
Yep.
on one side, and that'll give me what I need.
Videoing again.
All right, so there's our center against these lines.
Yeah, we're trying to center this right in this entire piece here.
It doesn't have to be absolutely exact.
What we're doing now, we're making the extra pieces to go on the outside of this. And we're doing that with this piece here. We're going to cut 4 of these. And what we're coming up with is a design that's going to be very similar to this.
Okay, so there's your first one. Now, we need 3 inches from here, and we have our 45.
There. This is how the pattern starts evolving. Wunderbar.
Okay, so basically we made this panel. It's a walnut panel for the top of the case.
This is the top of the case.
Okay, so this is
Okay.
the face side with the veneer tape.
All right,
We made this panel,
awesome, yeah.
which is going to be an inlay in the center of this. So we've already marked out our center. So we're going to center this
Yeah,
piece.
so we have to cut that shape out of those bigger
Yeah,
pieces.
so now we have to make the inlay,
Okay.
or basically put the inlay in.
Let's go.
All right, so we've taped the unit up, all right, the inlay onto the backing, and now what we're going to do is we're going to trace it with a razor blade. All right, I just put a new blade on it. You don't want to be stupid and use an old blade that is going to mess you up,
Yeah.
especially when you got all this work.
Woodworking is a lot more fun with sharp tools.
Yeah. Now, if you look at my blade, I'm at a very, very slight angle. Maybe 2 degrees, 3 degrees.
Yeah.
I'm going right up to the corner of this thing.
So it's another one of them times where you just take your time, no hurry, no stress, just relax and be very careful. definitely a time when patience is in order.
Okay. Mark it done, so we know that's done.
There we go.
All right, so we finished cutting on the other side, turned it over, and
Voila.
there we go.
Hot. Dang, that was good.
So we're good.
Alright, so now we're just getting it all rolled in. So now the veneer pattern is now flush with the walnut veneer. And now we're going to take it over to the
No, we're not.
press. No,
We're going to take the blue tape off of this side.
Oh yeah, we got to take all the blue tape off, and then we're going to put it in the vacuum bag. This one first. Good.
Okay. This is our back panel. All right. So basically, this is the back of the panel. This is the inside of the gun case. So this will be facing this way on the box, and when you open it up, when it's hinged, this is what you're going to see.
Right.
It's going to be a really outstanding piece. This 4-piece book match because of the grain configuration and the color of the wood. Once we get finish on this thing and sand it out, it's going to be outstanding.
Yep.
It's kind of like a little. It's just kind of like a little blast when you don't expect it and you open it up. And it's like, wow, look at that. It's very cool.
It's like in wood turners, the second thing they look at is the bottom, and that's the bottom. And then what we're going to do is put this, and we're about ready to glue this up in the vacuum bag, so we'll do that next. Okay, need a little glue. And then we're going to set up the vacuum press. Actually, all these steps are relatively easy. You just need to take your time, as usual, and go through the process steps.
Good?
Good.
Okay, so now we're laying it down. We have a very small overhang in some spots.
And this little mesh piece helps evenly distribute the pressure, right?
Yep. Watch it this way.
So once the panel is done, I took it home and started the sanding process. Obviously, it's a lot easier to sand this when the box is apart. So going through that process, and this only really took a few minutes. The wood was pretty smooth coming right out of the planer. And here's what it looks like with the panel in place. What we're looking at here is a dry fit. So once I'm satisfied with the dry fit, I go through the glue process, and I just use Titebond 2 and a little solder brush to get in all those joints. I like to wipe the glue off while I'm in the gluing up process. Because I like nice tight joints. Wiping off a little excess glue there. And here I'm dropping the bottom in. The bottom is a piece of solid walnut, and that was actually left over from my shotgun case project. So you might remember from my last video, when you're gluing in a panel, you never glue it in. You have to leave the space in there so the wood can shrink and expand with the seasons. So if you're making a door or you're making a case like this, let that panel float inside there. This process only really takes a few minutes. Again, using Titebond 2, it's perfectly adequate for this application. And here's what it's looking like when it's all glued up. I'm using some Irwin quick clamps. So next critical step is you got to cut the top off. And I think I used about 1.7" for the top, the lid, I should say. And I do the ends first, and then the front and the back. It's much easier to do this than to make up two separate pieces. So for instance, I would not want to make a separate bottom and a separate top and try to get them perfect. It's much easier when you're making a box to just cut the lid right off. So here I'm putting in a little wedge, and that helps prevent any burning or marks on the lid. So this just helps create that space so there's no pinching of the blade. Oops. Okay, so now that the lid is off, I'm just placing the gun inside there. This is a Hawken black powder rifle. And I'm seeing how it fits, looks good. I just love that. That's a rosewood book match. And for the finish, I'm using lacquer. Always love putting the finish on a project, whether it's a cutting board or something like this, because the finish really makes it pop nice. So again, this is a rosewood crotch 4-way book match. And you can see how the lacquer just makes that grain pop. It's just so gorgeous. It's a real nice surprise too when you open up the lid. The lid itself is very attractive, but the inside of the lid is great. Now here I've already made some saddles for the barrel and the stock, and I'm using flock. So at this point I've already painted the green paint in there, and now I'm using flocking, and this creates a felt-like appearance. And I put plenty of that on there and wait 24 hours and then just blow out any excess. But here it's okay to put a lot of flocking on there and make sure that you've got all the pieces. So after using 3, maybe 4 coats of lacquer, I'm using my old standby finish with Johnson Space Wax being applied with steel wool. And that helps knock down and finish the lacquer and gives it a nice smooth feel to it, as well. It gives it an extra protective coat. Here I'm just putting on the hinge. It's a 10-minute project. Using a couple awls to both hold the hinge in place as well as make a little pilot hole. So it's looking real good, and I just need to put the front hasp on and the handle, which I did not have this particular day. I installed them on a separate day, and I did not film placing them on there. So you'll notice, again, I've got those leather pieces inside the saddles, and here I'm using a tap. I'm using a 1/4 20 tap here. This is a ratcheting tap, which is really kind of nice. So I put a little bolt on there to hold the hold downs. You know, I made those hold downs you see right there behind the tap wrench. There's that ratcheting feature. Really nice little tool. So what I'm doing is just placing a little bolt inside that so that I can adjust the tension. And I placed a washer underneath this so that the little hold down pad does not rub off on the top of the saddle and rub off the flocking. So here's what it's looking like, and I think this came out just outstanding. I'm really, really happy with this. And I took it up to the gun club, and the guys went wild. They just really loved it a lot. So again, special thanks to Craig Newton on making this project, and learned a lot from him and got other veneering projects in mind. Here's the finished project with the hasp. These are actually locking hasps for boats. This is for a boat locker. And yeah, that kind of wraps it up. So you guys know the drill. We're making YouTube videos here, and I'm pumping out a lot of videos that I think are of interest. If you like the content I'm doing, please like, leave me a comment, and subscribe. That'd be great. And share it with your friends if you think it's content worth your friends looking at. There's just some samples how it would pop out. Again, another final look. And hey, thanks again for spending a few minutes of your day with me. I hope you liked the project. And tune in again for another episode of Bob's Woodshop.